people started to like notice, oh wow, this guy's super toxic. I don't like this guy anymore.
Yeah.
But they never had that, first time watching him, people, how do you call it? People are given this view that this guy is just a toxic guy with no good sportsmanship.
Yeah, and I mean, he is one of like the better content creators out there. And like I said, his first kind of exposure to the mainstream was, through Overwatch's competitive league and stuff. And so when people saw how he was streaming, it was very different than what they perceived. But
Right.
you should have known that the competitive league, it's professional, it's more mainstream. So of course, what you're seeing from those content creators is not going to be, for the most part, the real them.
Right.
And that was the thing with XQC. He had to tone it down from what he usually was. But then once he got banned and once he just started doing his own streams, it was like, I'm doing my own streams. This is my content. This is what I'm doing now. I don't have to adjust to the people who don't like it.
Exactly. I think that's what hurts streamers the most is when they start to adjust to what the viewers want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not always the case. XQC sometimes gives polls to his viewers, so that, the chat can choose what you should be playing. But when it gets to the point where you start to down yourself or reduce your identity, just so the viewers start to like you more, I think that's what hurts people because it creates an alternate or a false identity of who really this person is.
Yeah.
XQC without his toxicity would just be any other average streamer.
Yeah, any other average, guy who's good at games,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's where a lot of, like you said, that's where a lot of streamers lose it. Obviously, you want to engage with your audience, and do what's gonna interest them. But at the same time, like you said, you gotta do what interests you as well,
Yeah.
And that's where you see a lot of, especially streamers on Twitch. That's where you see them lose a lot of their passion for doing what they used to love. Is that, they get too focused on trying to please the minority of the audience,
Right.
Because the majority, with XQC and Tyler One, their majorities love them for being their toxic sides, and having that energy. It's only the minority. It's only the 1% within his viewers, that don't like the toxic side. And guess what? Because it's such a small percent, you lose nothing from those people leaving.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for smaller streamers, of course, you want every viewer to count, but the only way you're gonna build it up is if you stay loyal to that main fan base that's sticking with you for what you're known for.
Yeah.
And again, that doesn't mean you have to stick to one thing.
Yeah.
Because that's where also a lot of content creators fail, is they let themselves be defined by one thing that whenever they try and branch out, it immediately gets rejected by the fan base,
Yeah, because people start thinking, oh, how do you say that this person does not like this sort of content anymore, so why should I keep on watching this person?
Yeah. It's a lot of things that musicians fall under, they get themselves into one style, and then it's people start being like, oh, this is nothing like the first album, or this is nothing like your last album. And it's people don't understand. You gotta evolve,
Yeah.
With musicians, you gotta evolve as the times go. You gotta make music that not only does the musician like themselves, but is keeping up with the modern standard, and that doesn't mean you forcibly, again, try and just do what's hot, what's interesting in nowadays, because again, you don't want to lose what makes you your identity. But that's what separates the big, not necessarily the big streamers, but the big, streamers, the ones that connect with their audiences the most, the really good ones, from the ones that end up failing, is that they find a way to stay true to themselves, but at the same time mix in whatever new things are flowing in.
Yeah.
And that's why with us, we never said, oh well, let's just be a news podcast, or let's just be uh, a gaming podcast, you know, or an anime podcast, you know. We made it so that we cover anything and everything, you know.
Exactly.
Because, you know, that's where you see a lot of people lose growth. It's like they stick with one thing, and then they kind of reach the peak, you know. That's why you see a lot of creators, like, they stay around, like, the same amount of subscribers or subscribers or followers on Twitch and stuff or YouTube. And it's because, well, yeah, you confine yourself to this one area, and now you've reached that peak within that community, you know. Like a lot of anime YouTubers, you know, they'll like get a lot of views on videos and stuff, and they'll get maybe to like 100K subscribers, maybe even more if they're like really successful and, you know, have a lot of elements that we talked about that make content creators successful. But then it's like there's a certain peak, you know, especially like within communities. You know, anime communities have a certain peak of where your range is gonna reach. Same with the music. Like music side of like YouTube and Twitch, same with the art, the gaming, you know. But if you do a mix of everything, you're reaching all the way to these different ones. And sure, you can say, oh, but then you're not really solidifying a fan base because you're getting them from all these different areas. But it's like, sure, you know, you may get those people who are like, oh, I only tune in when he does like something art related or music related, you know.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're gonna develop that core fan base and find those people that that like everything that you do, you know.
Yeah.
HQC does. I mean, we bring him up a lot, but like that's because like in my mind, he's the mold of what a streamer should be like, you know.
Yeah.
He doesn't stick to one game, even when one game is popular. He doesn't stick to one game, you know.
Yeah, he does variety. I mean, he has his main games, but then he also stretches out to any other game.
Yeah.
That seems popular or like to, you know, just to play around with.
The man literally streamed himself sleeping one time.
Yeah, at one time. I mean, it was like the first time he ever did it. But like, you know, it's funny when, you know, you just watch your favorite streamer sleep for 8 hours straight.
Yeah. And it's like,
I think at one point. Oh, yeah?
Oh, you were saying?
Oh, okay. Also to add on to like the variety bit, at one point there was like a donator who asked him, so what games have you not played, like in terms of like horror games?
Mm-hmm.
And he decided to show us like his Steam library, and he showed us that he played like the majority of like the horror game like category on Steam, which basically shows how much he's willing to play whatever game, you know, just to have fun and not just to stick with one game, you know, and keep it boring.
Yeah. And that's the most thing, because obviously there's a lot of content creators, I think you can agree with this, like that we follow, that they kind of only stick with one game or they're only known for one game. Yeah. You know? And they're still successful. So it's not like you can't stick to that one category and be successful, you know? But in my eyes, you know, I really like content creators that mix it up, you know, because there's a difference between there's a divide within my content creators, you know. There's the content creators that I have and follow because I go to them for specific things, and then there's ones where, you know, these are probably the ones I watch most often because they do such a variety that, you know, it's interesting every single time you watch because they're doing something different.
Right.
And, you know, you can kind of see how we built off of that with our podcast right here, you know. Like I mentioned, you know, just dual variety, and, you know, to keep the passion for it, like we mentioned how a lot of these content creators lose it, to keep the passion, we just come up with whatever seems interesting to us or what we want to do, you know. Obviously, we want to involve people, our audience, and ask them, you know, oh, you know, if we're ever stuck on what we should do, you know, ask the audience, oh, what do you think we should talk about for the next episode, you know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we'll look at different ideas, and same with us too, you know, we'll bounce ideas off of each other and see, what's the most interesting what's the most interesting topic we can cover this week? What's the topic we want to cover the most, you know? Yeah. What's relevant right now, you know, is another thing we'll look at, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's what really makes a lot of these content creators successful, is just being able to have that variety, being able to keep you interested despite, changing,
Yeah.
Because I think that's another big thing is you can do varieties, but if you're not making it interesting each and every time, then, you're not going to gain that following.
Yeah, I agree.
And, one more thing before we go. I was saying this recently to one of our friends because he was saying he was thinking about streaming. And he had 2 games he was thinking of streaming first, right?
Right.
And I told him, go with this game because, while the first game he said, it's really big on Twitch, I told him, the reason you should go with the second game is because it's less popular on Twitch. And you would think, oh, well, why would you go with the less popular option? You go with the less popular option because you can end up being that big fish in a small pond,
Yeah.
Because if you immediately try and throw yourself into what's popular, guess what? If you look at the categories on Twitch will show you, how many people are watching certain categories,
Yeah.
If 280,000 people are watching people play Among Us, and that's just not one, that's a combined of all the people that are streaming on Twitch. If there are that many people watching, what's to say you end up getting even just one person watching your stream, because of how much variety there are, or how many people are out there watching Among Us stuff,
Yeah.
Versus if you go with that lesser game, sure, it has less people watching those things, but you're more likely to get more people watching your content because, they're looking for that content. You're like, well, let me look at this guy and see how he's doing it,
Yeah.
Which I think is just another way to help, build upon your content.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we got about 2 minutes 50 left, Dominic. Any last words?
All I have to say is that, happy Thanksgiving next week.
Oh, that's true. Thanksgiving's already next week, dude.
Dude, I already have I think just 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks left of school left, and I finished off the 15th of December.
Same. I finish around that time too. It's the final stretch.
Jeez, man.
It's a struggle, but we just got to keep going.
Exactly.
All right. So, if about 2 minutes remaining, we'll sign off here. We hope we're just as we hope to fulfill all the things that we said we like in content creators for all you listeners out there. And if there's ever anything you want to tell us that we can improve on, don't be afraid to say it. I think a new phrase we can use for this podcast, Dominic, is the door is always open. We're open to anyone and everyone coming onto this podcast and talking about, what they would want to with us.
Yeah.
We're open. You just gotta let us know. We'll collaborate on a date, a time, and just give us the topic ahead of time so we can do research like we usually do.
Yeah.
Make magic happen. All right. So, we thank you all again for joining us for another episode of the Rule 34 podcast. I've been your host, Jack.
I've been Dom.
And we thank you. And remember, if it exists, we have an opinion on it. Thank you all for joining us. And we'll see you in the next episode.